After a woman leaves Sean's apartment, Leah arrives, and he shares that he's interviewing for a housekeeper. Sean doesn't intend to hire her because her clothes don't match. Leah calls him an asshat and grabs his arm, leaving him confused. Back at St. Bonaventure, Allegra Aoki announces at a press conference that their international humanitarian program has selected a young boy named Gabriel. Gabriel, from the Republic of Congo, has severe heart abnormalities. She introduces Dr. Neil Melendez and Dr. Avi Mehta. Dr. Melendez doesn't seem happy with the news. Welcome back to Lion Recaps. Today, I'll explain episodes 9 and 10 of the series The Good Doctor, released in 2017. A team of doctors is operating on a sick boy while his mother sits at the reception, beating a kind of drum. The surgeons notice a complication in the boy's heart, and his heart rate starts to rise. Will he survive? Is the operation successful? At the reception, Dr. Melendez feels Aoki, who isn't even a doctor, should have stuck with the list of candidates selected, as Gabriel wasn't one of them. Still, she tells Melendez that several intangibles made her choose Gabriel instead. Melendez mentions the cuteness and sob stories would work on donors, but not on medical results, and certainly not on him. He's very upset. Dr. Mehta disagrees with him, and Aoki suggests that Melendez do his own workup before making his final decision. Later, Dr. Marcus Andrews and his wife, Dr. Isabel Barnes, walk into a ward to see a patient named Elizabeth McLaren, a podcast host. Elizabeth comments on how Dr. Andrews and his wife work together like ping and pong. Dr. Melendez and the intern team comprising Sean and Dr. Mehta visit Gabriel. While Dr. Melendez examines him, Dr. Mehta insists that Gabriel really needs their help. When they are in the hallway, Melendez mentions that the condition of Gabriel's chest is hopeless. Still, Dr. Mehta insists that they do all the tests before they conclude Gabriel's case is indeed hopeless. Moments later, Sean is in with Dr. Glassman, upset that Sean turned away the housekeeper because her clothes didn't match. Isn't that ridiculous? Dr. Glassman says if he learns how to interact better with people, Sean would be happier, but Sean walks away, insisting he's happy. Later, Sean and Dr. Claire walk into a ward with the machine for Gabriel. Sean tells Claire about his neighbor, Leah. He thinks Leah doesn't like him because she called him an asshat while touching him. Dr. Claire tells him that Leah was flirting with him, because when flirting, some people say the opposite of what they mean. She gives him tips to look out for to know she's flirting. Dr. Andrews and his wife enjoy their dinner when they receive a call that Elizabeth's specimen has been misplaced. Dr. Andrews assures her that they will find it. Claire searches for the specimen in the pathology lab as she has seen it placed in the specimen bottle, but she's told to check back with surgery. Sean is with Dr. Melendez, who realizes Gabriel's condition is worse. Dr. Mehta apologizes for pushing for further testing. They suggest a medication that could give Gabriel a couple of years of life. Melendez plans to break the news to Gabriel's mother and asks Dr. Mehta to tell Aoki the discovery. When Dr. Melendez arrives in Gabriel's room, he sees his mother playing the drum. She tells him that her shaman instructed her to tap it to remind Gabriel's heart to beat until the doctors fix it. She mentions that her shaman told her a stronger healer would save Gabriel, and she believes Dr. Melendez is the healer. Dr. Melendez informs her son has a heart he cannot fix. She insists that they wouldn't have come so far with a heart she didn't think he could fix. Dr. Claire's search for Elizabeth's sample is hopeless, so Dr. Andrews and Jessica Preston inform Elizabeth that they cannot find her specimen. Elizabeth is worried that her voice box will be removed if they don't find it. Sean tells Dr. Glassman that he's taking flirting lessons, and Dr. Glassman is surprised. He asks if Sean feels lonely, but Sean says he likes to be alone, and the conversation gets switched around. Sean learns that Dr. Glassman is lonely. Dr. Claire and Dr. Carly hunt around the hospital for Elizabeth's specimen. After scaring Leonard, he reveals he stopped at the cafeteria for a little while. Dr. Kalu is packing up Gabriel's things when Gabriel's vitals suddenly drop. Dr. Kalu calls for help as she begins to tap her drum. Sean and Dr. Mehta come to examine Gabriel. Sean suddenly has an idea and chases after him. Meanwhile, Claire and Carly go to the cafeteria, where Gwen hands them the biohazard bag, but it is not Elizabeth's sample. Dr. Melendez tells Sean to share his idea with Aoki. Sean explains to Aoki the procedure that could save Gabriel's life. Still, Dr. Melendez feels otherwise and mocks Aoki for trying to make decisions for him. Sean wonders if fear of failure is a good reason not to try the procedure. Dr. Melendez hopes Gabriel will survive. Elizabeth argues with Claire about the missing tissue specimen, but Elizabeth hugs and thanks her when Claire apologizes. Dr. Melendez is impressed and promises not to reveal that she broke the rules. Melendez confronts Gabriel's mother about Gabriel's medications when Dr. Mehta mentions that the medications aren't working. Dr. Melendez discovers Gabriel's mother has been withholding the medications to keep Dr. Melendez from sending Gabriel home to their uninhabitable village to die. She says she wants to hope, and Dr. Melendez agrees to do whatever they can. At dinner, Dr. Andrews and his wife ask about Elizabeth. He feels he did the surgery correctly, and anything after is not his problem. His wife is angry that he's campaigning to be president of the hospital, leaving her far out of his life. Dinner is ruined. Dr. Claire's drawn the trips of each specimen and where they all go on a whiteboard. Sean walks in and presents a chart about all the flirting he's noticed in the hospital. He insists that Dr. Claire was flirting with Dr. Melendez earlier, as he had seen her make a few flirty gestures. Dr. Claire denies just as Dr. Melendez interrupts them. He asks Sean to elaborate on his idea for Gabriel's surgery. Dr. Melendez still thinks Sean's procedure has loopholes in the OR, but he and Sean do a practice surgery on a 3D image of Gabriel's heart. Claire searches for the specimen, but she still doesn't find it. Dr. Andrews comes in and says he wants to join in on the search. Jessica reprimands Claire for apologizing to Elizabeth and tells her they're out of time to save the specimen. Dr. Melendez and Sean continue to work on the 3D heart, and they succeed. Sean wishes him luck but admits he doesn't believe in it. The team informs Elizabeth that they don't know if she has cancer. Her options are either having a surgery she may not need, leaving her without speech, or doing nothing and dying. Gabriel's mother and Dr. Kalu bring Gabriel to the OR to begin his procedure. Dr. Claire looks on as Elizabeth sits in her room and reads a children's book to her daughter. Dr. Claire stops Elizabeth's surgery and asks for more time when she suddenly realizes there could have been a mismatched name on the specimen's label. Claire works with Carly again, hoping to find the specimen. Gabriel's surgery is successful, and Dr. Melendez informs Gabriel's mother. The latter is still tapping on the drum that his heart is beating just fine on its own. Elizabeth wakes up, and Claire informs her that the specimen was saved. Dr. Andrews also informs her that she doesn't have cancer. She hugs and thanks Claire. Aoki watches as Dr. Kalu and Dr. Melendez watch cartoons with Gabriel and his mother. Sean comes to see Dr. Glassman, who praises him for learning something new and mentions that he will learn faster when he finds a life coach. Sean is upset and asks if Dr. Glassman is giving up on him. Dr. Glassman admits he can't always be there, but Sean insists he doesn't want a stranger helping him and walks out. Claire congratulates Melendez outside while he waits for Jessica. Jessica soon joins Melendez and gives Claire the court papers from Elizabeth and her lawyers as the couple heads home. Leah and Sean get off the elevator, and he tells her she looks absurd in her sweater. She tells him she has applied and offers him one. Sean then follows her into her apartment. The next day, Dr. Andrews announces that a VIP patient with torn ligaments in his left arm will be hospitalized at St. Bonaventure. He has room for a few resident surgeons to assist him and Dr. Melendez. Sean mentions that he has never done such an operation before, and Dr. Andrew teases that the patient is a pro athlete. Dr. Kalu mentions 3 of them, so Dr. Melendez says whoever isn't on their team will be assisting Dr. Coyle on a double-leg fasciotomy. Dr. Andrews makes them pick a team, and Claire ends up with Dr. Coyle. Dr. Andrews and his team examine their patients' profiles. The patient is named Bobby Atto. Dr. Andrews mentions Bobby as a champion gamer, much to everyone's surprise. It appears that Bobby has torn the ligaments in his left arm from over-excessive gaming. Sean suddenly has to go. In Dr. Glassman's office, Sean sees the therapist hired to help him, Dr. Melissa Bourne. Melissa mentions that Dr. Glassman thought it would be best to meet her before their first in-home session, but Sean doesn't feel comfortable. He reluctantly agrees to have her assist him, but he walks out. Later, the team finally meets with Bobby, and Dr. Andrews assures him of proper care. Just then, Sean walks in and asks Bobby to squeeze his hands. As Bobby does, Sean can detect Bobby's condition with his photographic memory. Before Sean can complete his diagnosis, Dr. Melendez interrupts him and asks that they prep Bobby for surgery. As Sean leaves, Bobby calls him back. Bobby notices how the other doctors treat Sean like a noob and encourages him to stand up for himself, as it appears that they do not respect him. Dr. Claire is going through Dr. Coyle's patients' files. Dr. Coyle interrogates her for a bit and concludes that she is smart. He asks her to take the lead on the procedure for the patient. The patient's name is Hazel. Dr. Claire examines her swollen legs and warns that if they do not act quickly, the damage to her legs could be irreparable and she could lose her legs. Hazel panics, but Dr. Coyle assures her that they will save her legs. Dr. Coyle seems impressed by Dr. Claire. In the OR, Dr. Andrews and his team are operating on Bobby. Dr. Kalu praises one of Dr. Andrews' research papers. Sean compliments Dr. Melendez's hair and recommends that Bobby do a nerve conduction test, but Dr. Melendez objects. Dr. Andrews asks Dr. Melendez to hand over the rest of the procedure to Dr. Kalu to allow him the opportunity to show them what he can do. In Dr. Coyle's OR, Dr. Coyle talks through the surgery to ease the atmosphere, acknowledging that Dr. Claire is used to working with Dr. Melendez, who is always so serious. He tells her to be free, so she will make fewer mistakes. He encourages her to operate on Hazel's other leg and adds that the best way to learn is by doing it. Later, Sean contemplates taking the bus home and decides not to. Instead, he decides to sleep in the hospital custodian's closet late at night. Sean does this to avoid meeting with his therapist. Dr. Glassman sends him a text to remind him of his appointment, but he deletes it. Sean runs into Dr. Glassman, who worries that Sean is at an impasse in the morning. He's not happy that Sean avoided his appointment with Dr. Melissa. Dr. Glassman also mentions that Sean stinks, as Sean has not had a shower. Sean tells him that he will clean up in the doctor's lounge. Dr. Glassman tells Sean that Sean could have said no instead of depriving him of a good night's sleep and hygiene. Dr. Glassman tells him he's a grown man and can make decisions for himself. Dr. Glassman bribes him with the new surround system for his TV and asks him to meet with Dr. Melissa for 3 sessions, after which he can refuse to see her anymore, and Sean agrees. Dr. Coyle and Dr. Claire visit Hazel in her ward and assure Hazel that her legs could take time to heal, as she is worried about a possible amputation. Dr. Coyle seems to be attracted to Dr. Claire. He praises her skill, but Claire feels awkward. Later, Claire asks if Sean or Dr. Kalu would like to trade patients, as she feels Dr. Coyle is too friendly. Dr. Kalu says he wants to remain with Dr. Andrews because he lets him take the lead. Sean says he likes Bobby because he gives very good advice. When Bobby is awake, he's disappointed that Sean wasn't involved in the surgery. Sean decides to speak and tells Dr. Melendez that Bobby needs an MRI. Dr. Melendez refuses, despite Sean's persistence. Sean says Dr. Melendez doesn't respect him, and Dr. Melendez agrees that he doesn't at that moment. Dr. Kalu steps in and suggests that Dr. Melendez order the MRI, since Bobby is a pro athlete and could require extra attention. Dr. Melendez reluctantly agrees, and Sean hurries off. During the MRI, Bobby tells Sean to be more fierce if he wants to be respected, but Sean says he only wants to be a good surgeon. Sean talks about how he has to see Dr. Melissa to get a surround system. Bobby mentions that his parents made him talk to a therapist when he was younger, but he never told. Bobby tells Sean that doing whatever he wants is always an option. After the MRI, Sean and Kalu discover that Bobby has cancer that has spread to his brain, making additional surgery much more complicated. Bobby was diagnosed with cancer 3 years prior. Dr. Melendez grills Bobby on why he kept his diagnosis a secret, as it would have helped him better review his condition. But Bobby yells that if Dr. Melendez had listened to Sean, he would have known. Bobby says Dr. Melendez does not respect Sean, but Dr. Melendez insists he does. Sean intervenes, and Bobby admits that his cancer diagnosis affected his gaming. He would rather spend his days living rather than dying. Sean suggests they conduct a full body scan, and Bobby shows his support. Claire checks on Hazel, and Hazel opens up about how difficult her job has become due to harassment from her employer. Her sister suggests she quit, but Hazel doesn't want to. Suddenly, her heartbeat rises, and she pages Dr. Coyle. He insists that she handle the crisis, despite her reluctance. Claire is very uncomfortable around him. After a meeting with Dr. Glassman, Dr. Melendez learns that the tumor in Bobby's brain makes it inoperable. He breaks the news to Bobby. When Dr. Coyle and Claire are alone in Hazel's room, he makes unwanted sexual advances toward her. When Claire refuses, Dr. Coyle threatens her. Later, Dr. Melendez and Jessica have dinner with her father. Mr. Preston offers to pay for their wedding, so Jessica can quit her job and start a family, but the couple refuses. The situation becomes tense, and Dr. Melendez criticizes Mr. Preston as living off his father's money instead of contributing to society. He calls him a parasite. Mr. Preston leaves. Dr. Glassman confronts Sean about sleeping in the closet to avoid seeing a therapist. He suddenly realizes something and runs off. Claire talks to Dr. Kalu, whom she is having an affair with, about Dr. Coyle and yells at him for not supporting her and downplaying the issue. Later, Dr. Glassman tells Bobby he can remove the tumor if he wants part of his brainstem removed. The procedure would paralyze the left side of his body. Dr. Andrew warns him that the surgery will ultimately end his gaming career, but Bobby agrees without hesitation. Dr. Kalu then confronts Dr. Coyle and slams him against a locker in the locker room. Dr. Kalu physically threatens him and orders him to stay away from Claire. Bobby's surgery goes well, and Bobby reveals to Sean that he wasn't good at anything until he found video games and became the best in the world. He convinces Sean to stop telling people what he can and can't do. Later, Dr. Melendez apologizes to Jessica for his remarks and learns that she doesn't want children. Dr. Glassman confronts Sean in the hospital lobby and insists that he see Dr. Melissa. Sean has a meltdown and hits Dr. Glassman in the face. He runs out of the hospital. Dr. Kalu is fired for assaulting an employee, and Sean has suddenly disappeared with his things. That was all from the video. I hope you liked it. Subscribe for more content like this and hit the like button to help us out. Also, leave a question if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Until next time, take care